File, march! To portray the British forces well. What we'd like to do for just a few minutes is to tell you a little bit about the cavalry, or the dragoons that were used in the American Revolution. They had one part of three major roles, and each of you will explain a little bit about those different roles. The first role, the cavalry, since we had, as he alluded to, these 1,400-pound friends, the horses could go on a good day in about 8 strides, 35 or 40 miles an hour. And they weighed anywhere from 1,000 to 1,400 pounds. So if you were really tough and strong, unless you could take out a 1,400-pound linebacker coming at you at 20 miles and 30 miles an hour, you couldn't be able to stand still and keep your position. So they use the horses a lot for reconnaissance and for fighting the enemy, but not so much as what we think of as charging forward and fighting. They use them a lot for carrying messages and for outposts because they could see what was going on and would come back and inform the commander in this case. So reconnaissance, that role is part of finding the enemy. So when you think of cavalry, you saw the infantry out here, they would fix the enemy. They would get them fixed and fight them. But finding the cavalry was the job of the American dragoons. And as you can see, we got 3 guys that are dressed as American dragoons, and 2 guys you'll hear about in just a second that are dressed as British dragoons. Yeah. They're really pretty good guys. Anyway, thank you for your participation. We appreciate that. So the different aspects we just want to go over the cavalry will be explained to you in just a second, and we'll have some picture opportunities afterwards if you want to get your picture taken with the horses. But first of all, I just want to remind you, the role of the cavalry in the American Revolution was to find the enemy, also to guard things, and to locate things like if you needed to get 100 guys across a river, you got to find a place which is called a ford, which will allow you to go across. So finding the enemy, the main job of the cavalry, and every one of them would have a good horse. Some horses were more used to the warfare than others. We'll hear about in a second. This young man, as you can see, is probably the accurate size and age of an actual American dragoon. The rest of us up here are a little bit too old. The average age for an American dragoon was about 16 to 20 years old. The really old guys were 22 to 25. Who's 22 here? 22? You could be in charge. Oh, you're not. You're 23. Man, why do they use young men in the dragoons?
They use young men for the dragoons because maybe they went inside playing in the woods with their friends, or they went hunting with their fathers. So maybe they call it. They didn't have maps or iPhones where you can just go on GPS and find your location. So they use the little kids. Well, not little kids, but they use teenagers to be able to guide these dragoons.
What he meant to say was strong, athletic, intelligent young men. Yeah. But what kind of iPhone did George Washington have? He didn't have one. Just like he said, they didn't know the area. So if they used and impressed the young kids, what were the other 2 roles they'd use it for?
They're used for guiding, or they could just easily take them right back to where the British are and we can be able to attack them.
So the local knowledge, since there were no maps, like Brandon said, was terribly important to have guides and scouts that would serve in the cavalry that could ride out, and you'll see that in the battle, that they'll ride out, find where the enemy is, and they come back and report. Now, one of the most difficult things in the American Revolution with the cavalry was not all the horses are fit to be soldier horses or cavalry horses. A lot of times, horses would come right up the racetrack. Colonial racing, horse racing was very popular, still is today. We have Colonial Downs just down the road. As a matter of fact, Trooper Wyco has a horse that's just off the racetrack. He's trying to train this horse how to be a cavalry horse, but running fast is a lot different than explosions and gunfire and all that stuff. Rob, tell us about that.
Yeah, you probably notice she's a little bit different than the walker horses. They've got this even trotting gait, and she prefers to canter uptight. But anyways, the first time she's fresh off the racetrack, along with another one of the horses. Her racing name was Cajun Soup, and she was a stakes race, very high race. So today is her first exposure to gunfire. She did pretty well. First time I drew a saber on her, I ended up on the ground. But I'm hoping today that I'll be able to slice a cabbage. So it takes patience, a lot of reassurance, and again, their natural instinct is to run from swords and guns. So they've got to have ultimate trust in you and comfort of the other horses. And the reason that thoroughbreds weren't highly prized was because they're so high energy. They eat a lot of food, and there wasn't a lot of forage, during the winters and tough months. In fact, Washington at one point left his horses loose rather than have them starve. He was a big avid racer, and he had several horses. If you come to Mount Vernon, you'll see Cajun Soup portraying one of Washington's horses called Blueskin. And you'll see Blueskin in the museum at Mount Vernon, which is a white gelding.
Great, thank you. Now the next thing we want to talk about is the weapons. Everybody sees in the movies where the guy on the horse rides up, sees somebody out of a distance, pulls out a pistol, and goes, pow, and shoots him. But Cooper Bob is going to tell us, Cooper Simpson, is going to tell us how accurate that is, and he's going to tell us why he's dressed in a green uniform. Bob, go ahead.
This is pretty much a cavalry pistol. It's big, it's bulky. It's really only good for one thing, and that's beating them like a club as you ride by. In order to accurately, even be close to having a chance, they say you used to have to touch it to yourself for the person you're trying to shoot. Because when you're riding at a gallop or even a trot, you got a pistol that's semi-accurate to maybe 10 feet, and you're doing this, it's really no point. So, each trooper used to get issued 5 rounds of ammunition. At the end of about 6 months, that same ammunition would go bad, so they'd have to trade it in. They very rarely shot their pistols. They also had carbines, which was basically a shortened musket. There again, same thing. It's really not accurate. It can be at times if you practice time to time. But really, their main weapon was, anybody know?
Saber.
Saber, that's correct.
Or bayonet.
This is their main weapon. There's 2 types. You got a curved saber, and then you got a straight saber. Okay. Those are mainly good for stabbing. You ride up to them, you stab it in, and then you pull it out. That's the reason why they're straight. This one is more of a slashing effect. They ride up, they slash them and all that stuff. One thing you would notice on a lot of horses back then, their ears, especially on their right side, will be a little bit shorter than their left. Well, as you can imagine, in the heat of the battle, the reason why I'm dressed differently, anybody know? Other than I'm a British. Each unit pretty much had their own colors. The Americans, they look pretty much like this, the 1st Virginia. There was also a legion called Lee's Legion. They were American Revolutionary, and the cavalry, they dressed almost similar to the British Dragoons. There was a couple of incidences where the Americans actually rode up to a British column as they were marching, and then they turned on them and pretty much slaughtered them all while they were because they didn't know any different. By the time they figured it out, it was too late. So that's pretty much that's unfortunate.
So the primary weapon for the cavalry was the saber. As he said, the pistols were used a lot for signaling because you couldn't really hit anything going up and down and the weapon not firing very accurately. What was another weapon that the cavalrymen would have? So that's a carbine. Everybody guess? What's your 1,200-pound friend here? There's a good example at the Battle of Guilford Courthouse. The American cavalry came from behind or to the right of the British at a dead run, about 120 of them, and just literally knocked down all the British soldiers, and most of them, it looked like they'd killed them all, but when they turned around to see what happened, a lot of the British guys stood up, because like we said, this is 1,300 pounds of meat going 20, 30, 40 miles an hour. You can be very brave, but you're still going to get knocked to the ground. So not often did they use the horses for that. Mostly these were scouting and reconnaissance. But as Bob said, the uniforms and the hunting shirts you see a lot of these militia guys wear, the white long shirts, that was a very common uniform. And so it's very difficult on horseback, especially with the Americans wearing almost the same uniform as Bob's got on, to keep the to tell the difference between the different kind of cavalry that were out in the field. So what we're going to try to do for just a second is we're going to show you a little skill at arms demonstration. Great photo opportunity. We're going to gallop down this field. Now some of these horses will do it, some will kind of do it, and some are terrified. So if anybody could do it, please give them a round of applause. We're going to take these swords, and this horse is a great horse, but he's only 4 years old. So he's not afraid of the sword, but getting him to run straight and do all the right stuff, it's a little bit tough. It's like anybody have a 4-year-old? Your head is, right? Don't put your finger in the socket, all that stuff. So we're going to come by, and using a sword, we're going to rotate our hands, we're going to come at that cabbage like it's somebody and either stab it with a straight sword or cut it in half, simulating a watermelon, all right, or whatever. But the point of the horse is going up and down the motion, It sounds strange, but the faster they go, the smoother it is. Because when they're going at a trot, all their feet are hitting the ground at a different moment. And so it's bouncy. So if you have your arm out like this and it's bouncy, you're not going to hit your thing. But here, listen, this is important. But there's a life lesson that goes with this demonstration. So if you worry about what Fluffy here is thinking about, or if you worry too much about, oh, I'm not holding my hand right, or I'm doing whatever, if you take your eyes off the prize, if you take your eyes off that target and start worrying about everything around you, what's the likelihood you're going to hit that thing? Almost zero. But if you fix your eyes on the right thing, don't worry about the sword, look at what you're going to hit, get your hand right in front of your face, and put that sword tip just like it's part of your body, part of who you are, and keep your eyes on a target. You'll hit that thing and pick it right off almost every time, if your horse cooperates to go straight. So we're going to demonstrate that, and also, it's a little bit morbid, but we're going to have some placards laying on the ground with little British soldiers painted on them. The challenge is, if you come by, you don't quite reach the ground, and a lot of times, like I mentioned, the British soldiers get knocked down, or the Americans would, so you have to come by and impale something on the ground with your sword. If you don't keep your saddle locked up and keep your balance right, you'll end up on the sword or on the ground with the guy that you're trying to get rid of. So we're going to try to pick those things up off the ground as well. So if you would, you're welcome to come a little closer. We're going to run right down the middle of the thing. And like I said, at the end of this, we'll break up into groups and questions. And if you'd like to get your picture taken with any of these fine beasts, we'll be happy to let you do that. All right, so first I'm going to try it on this young horse here and see if I can pick off one of these cabbages.
Hey, Gary,
Which way are you going to